Last time, what I showed you was how to run database calls. This time, I'm going to show you how to automate those database calls. What I'm going to do is make a new file. First, what I'm going to do is make a class. I'm going to start with setting private variables for all the information that I need to actually access the database. So here, I've got the database user, and then the password of the database user, the name of the database, and the name of the server. What I need now is some way to actually set the values for this database access information. So what I'm going to do is use a function, and this function will be set as public. So this function takes the following parameters. You have the name of the database user, the password of the database user, the name of the database, and the name of the server. And this part here simply assigns the parameters to the private variables. So this is how you access a private variable. Quite literally, it's just a $sign and then this. And then an arrow thing right here, and then the name of the private variable. So here, what I'm doing is assigning the input for the database user to the private variable for the database user. And next, what I'm doing is assigning the input for the password to the private variable for the password, and then the same thing for the database name and the server name. Now that I've done that, there are a few database functions which I'll be using quite often. The first is retrieving all records from a table. So here, there are 4 options. First, there is retrieving all records without any filtering. The second is retrieving all records and filter by one thing. The third is retrieving all records and filtering by 2 items. And finally, there is retrieving all records and filtering by 3 items. This function here retrieves all records without any filtering. Now, this part here is exactly what I've shown you before, except I've just put it in a function. The only difference is that in the SQL query, the table to access is a parameter of the function here. And because this is a function, I have to return the query results. This function returns all records and filters by 1 item. This right here, well, these are the exact same steps which I've shown you before to do a prepared statement. And here, it's just in a function instead. And like before, there are just a few changes which I've had to make to turn this into a function. First off, in the SQL query, the table to access is a parameter, as is the column containing the item that you're filtering by. And the item that you're filtering by is also a parameter, as is the data type of this filtering item. Also, like before, what I have to do is return the results that were generated from the query. This function here retrieves all records and filters by 2 items. Now functionally, it's essentially the same thing as the previous one here, except with one minor difference. That difference is that the SQL query has an AND because, well, there is an extra column that I'm filtering by. And because I have that new column, I have to specify what that column is, which is also a parameter. And then I need to specify the second item which I'm filtering by, which is also a parameter. And then I need the data type of that second filtering item. Since I now have two question marks here and here, which correspond to this and this, what I need is two data types, one for this and one for this. So what I've done is I've simply taken the data type for the first filtering record and then concatenated it with a period here to the data type of the second filtering record. And I've put that into a string. And I've used that concatenated string here with the binding step. So right here. So yeah, that's the only difference between filtering on two records and filtering on one record. This function here retrieves all records and filters by three records. And as you can imagine, it's actually quite similar to this one here, which is filtering on two records. So here's the difference. The SQL query has a second AND for the third column that I'm filtering by. And of course, I am specifying what that third column is, which is also a parameter. And I am identifying what the third filtering record is, which is also a parameter. Then I have the data type of the third filtering value, which again is also a parameter. And here, with the string which contains the data types for the values, which correspond to the question marks here, and here, and here, I've just added the data type for the third filtering record right at the end, here. And that really is the only difference. The next thing that I might find myself doing often is updating records. So for that, what I can use is an update statement, which looks like this. This function will update one record and filter by one record. So basically, I just took this function and then I changed the SQL query, and I also removed this part here simply because to update a record does not retrieve any records. Anyways, this function here will update one record and filter by one record. So the SQL query is this. As you've seen here, what I'm doing is updating one single table, which is also a parameter for this function here. Then I am setting the value of one column, which is also a parameter of this function here, to a new value, which is this right here. And that's the change which I made to the SQL query. And of course, I also have to change the binding step here. And what I've done is, first off, as a parameter of this function, I got the data type for the value which I'm updating, the new value, right here. And I'm concatenating that with the data type for the record that I'm filtering by. This change here had to happen simply because of a change with the SQL query here, when this became an update rather than a select. This function will update one record based on a filtering of two records. I basically just took this function, then I changed the SQL query from a select to an update, and then just like I did here, I made the necessary changes, and then, yeah. This function here will update one record on a filtering of three records. And just like this one here, I just took this function here and then changed the SQL query from a select to an update, and then made the necessary changes, and then, yeah. So that's it really. So far, what I've done is made functions for select and update. Something else that I might want to do is delete records. This is a delete statement. This is a select all statement. Notice how this is the same as this, where the only difference is that this is a delete from and this is a select all from, where the star here means all records. Well, that's actually pretty nice, because that means that what I could do is just take this function and then change this select all to delete from, and my job's done. And of course, I don't need this part anymore, since what I'm doing is removing records and not retrieving records. And I could do the exact same thing with this one here. Change this to a delete, and I can do the same thing here and change this to a delete. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. This function here will delete records based on a filtering of one record. And basically what I did was I just took this function here, then I changed the select to a delete, and that's about it, since really this and this use the exact same inputs. This function here will delete records based on a filtering of two records. And like with the last one, what I did was I took this function and then changed the SQL query from a select to a delete, and that's about it. Finally, this function here will delete records based on a filtering of three records. And like with the last two, what I did was take this function here, the select, and then I changed the select to a delete, and then that's about it. Now, that's all I'm going to do. So let's see if these functions actually work. So first off, what I have to do is link the external file. To link an external PHP file, first you go include, and then within a pair of quotes, you put the relative path of the file that you want to include, or link. Once again, since we're dealing with an external file, the file pathing rules apply. Now, because the functions were inside of a class, the first thing that I have to do is create an instance of that class. One way to do that is by first creating a variable, and then going new, and then the name of that class, and then a pair of round brackets. With that, we're ready to get started. So first off, to access a database, recall that you needed things like the name of the database, the database user, and all that stuff. This function here I had made earlier, and it basically sets all that information. so I'm setting the database user, the password of that database user, and then the rest of the required information. Now, that function was marked as public, so to access things which are public, this is how you do it. First, you start with the name of the instance of a class, and then this arrow thing, and then the name of the thing which is marked as public, which in this case is a function. The first function which I'm going to test is retrieving all records without any filtering. In this case, what I'm doing is retrieving all records from the videos table. And I have inserted some test data, so I should be seeing all of this. Alright, so I'm gonna first off save this, and then go to the web browser, and then go to the site, go to the main page, and would look at that, I see all those records. So that worked. Next, what I'm gonna do is test retrieving all records and filtering by one item. Here, I'm looking in the videos table and finding the row of records where the video ID is 1A. So I should be seeing exactly one row of records. So I'm going to save this and then reload the page so that the new script runs. And then I see one row of records, so that worked. Next, I'm going to test retrieving all records and filtering by two items. Here, I'm once again looking in the videos table, and I'm finding the row of records where the video ID is 2B, where the title is title 2, and yeah. So, I'm going to save this, and then go to the web browser, reload, and I see one row of records where the video ID is 2B. So, that worked. Finally, what I'm going to test is retrieving all records and filtering by three items. Here, I'm looking in the videos table, and I'm looking for the row of records where the video ID is 1A, the title is title 1, and the description is description 1. So, I'm going to go to the browser, reload, and I see one row of records where the video ID is 1A, the title is title 1, the description is description 1, and this is the correct record. So that worked. Next, there was the update functions. So first, I'm going to test updating based on a filtering of one record. Here, I am looking in the videos table and then finding the row of records where the video ID is 1A, and then I am updating the column path to video file, and the new record, or the new value, will be new value 1. So, what I should be seeing is this row of records here, and this right here should change. So I'm going to go back to VS Code, save this, go back to the browser, reload, and then I'm going to get the latest records from this table. And would you look at that? I see new value 1. So that record changed and that function worked. Next, I'm going to test updating based on a filtering of two items. Here, I'm looking in the videos table, and I'm looking for the row of records where the video ID is 1A, the title is title 1, and I'm changing the value of path to video file to new value 2. So I'm going to go to the browser, reload, and then once again, I'm going to get the latest records, and I see new value 2 right here. So that worked. Finally, I'm going to test updating on a filtering of 3 items. Here, I'm looking in the videos table, and I'm finding the row of records where the video ID is 1A, the title is title 1, the description is description 1, and I'm changing the value of path to video file to new value 3. So this right here. So I'm going to go to the browser, reload, and then once again get the latest records, and new value 3 right here. So that worked. Finally, there was the delete functions. So first, I'm going to test deleting on a filtering of 1 item. Here, I'm looking in the videos table, and then deleting the row of records where the video ID is 10J. So I should be removing this record here. So I'm going to go to the browser, reload the page, and then would look at that. I don't see a video ID of 10J, and the record, this one here, where the title was this, no longer exists. So that worked. Next, what I'm going to test is removing a record based on a filtering of 2 items. Here, I'm looking in the videos table, and then finding the row of records where the video ID is 11K, and the title is Delete Me Too. So I should expect to see this record gone. So I'm going to go back to VS Code, save this, go back to the browser, reload, get the latest records, and Delete Me Too is now gone. So that worked. Finally, I'm going to test removing a row of records based on a filtering of 3 items. Here, I'm looking in the videos table. I'm finding the row of records where the video ID is 11A, where the title is Delete Me 3, and the description is also the same thing. So, I should expect to see this record gone. I'm going to go back to the browser, reload, and then get the latest records. And then, as you can see, this record here no longer exists. So that worked. And there you have it. The database access functions all work. At this point, what I can do is start working on the functionality of the website. So next part, what I'm going to do is work on the login functionality. Oh, you're still here. I guess you made it right to the end. Well, I suppose you like the video, so great. I mean, as long as you're here and you like the video, why not press that like button and subscribe to my channel? That would be nice. Anyways, if you will excuse me now, I have to count the spiders on the ceiling. Let's see. 1, 2, 3. Oh God, it's a big one.